Just under 50 days before the Olympics, Rio de Janeiro's state governor has issued an executive order declaring a state of emergency that authorizes additional funding to fulfill obligations during the Games. A severe economic crisis has prevented the state from honoring its commitments to the organization of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, reads the order, released in the official government gazette Friday. The crisis has been causing severe difficulties in the provision of essential public services and can even cause a total breakdown in public security, health, education, mobility, and environmental management, the order reads. Emergency measures needed to avoid a total collapse in public security, health, education, transport, and environmental management. 49 days before the opening of the Olympics, the governor of Rio de Janeiro has declared a state of financial emergency and begged for federal support to avoid a total collapse in public security, health, education, transport, and environmental management. The plea for funds is an embarrassment for the host of South America's first Games and adds to a long list of woes that includes the impeachment of the president, the deepest recession in decades, the biggest corruption scandal in memory, the Zika epidemic and a wave of strikes and occupations of government buildings. Brazil's economy is expected to shrink by about 4% this year as a result of weak commodity prices, low demand from China, political paralysis, and the Lava Jato, car wash, corruption investigation, which forced the suspension of many construction contracts and led to the arrest of dozens of senior executives. Rio is particularly hard hit because it is the headquarters of the state-run oil company Petrobras, which is at the center of the investigation. Faced by falling tax revenues, the state government has slashed health, police, and education budgets. Teachers and doctors have faced lengthy delays in receiving their salaries, prompting strikes and occupations of schools and hospitals. The acting governor, Francisco Dornelles, classified the situation in the official gazette as a financial calamity that could prevent the fulfillment of the obligations as a result of the Olympic and Paralympic Games Rio 2016. This is in part a political tactic. By declaring a state of financial emergency, the government is able to borrow funds without approval from the state legislature. The interim president, Michel Temer, has reportedly already agreed to disperse federal funds to cover Rio's shortfall and ensure the Olympics goes ahead as planned. The impact remains to be seen. Most of the Olympic projects are funded by private companies or Rio City, which is in a stronger financial position rather than Rio State. With the exception of the Velodrome, the main sporting venues are either complete or on schedule. But Rio State is responsible for the Metro Rio extension that is already very late and is now due for completion mere days before the start of the Games, when it will be needed to alleviate the usually dire traffic to Barra de Tijuca, the site of the Athletes' Village and Olympic Park. It was also supposed to clean up the sewage and other pollution in Guanabara Bay, which will stage the yachting events. But officials say that this is now impossible due to a lack of funds, which means Olympic sailors may have to dodge plastic bags, human excrement, and other waste. City Mayor Eduardo Paes insisted the state of emergency would in no way impede Rio's ability to meet its Olympic commitments and stage an exceptional Games. He stressed that the bulk of the bill for the event was being paid by the municipality, not the state. The city of Rio is in good shape financially, even in a time of crisis. We keep pushing. We inaugurate things almost every week. Rio de Janeiro declares public calamity just weeks ahead of 2016 Olympics. Serious economic crisis blamed on tax shortfall as country's oil revenues slide. The state of Rio de Janeiro has declared a state of public calamity due to severe financial difficulties less than 50 days before the start of the Olympic Games. State Governor, Francisco Dornelles, said the serious economic crisis could stop the government from honoring its commitments to host the Games. The Olympics are set to begin on August 5, and the country already faces a public health crisis over the Zika epidemic, as well as a presidential impeachment trial and a deepening recession. The state of Rio de Janeiro has declared a state of public calamity due to severe financial difficulties less than 50 days before the start of the Olympic Games. State Governor, Francisco Dornelles, said the serious economic crisis could stop the government from honoring its commitments to host the Games. The Olympics are set to begin on August 5, and the country already faces a public health crisis over the Zika epidemic, as well as a presidential impeachment trial and a deepening recession. The governor has blamed his state's financial crisis on the impact the global oil crash has had on tax revenues, while Brazil has battled worsening recession. In a decree, Mr. Dornelles said the economic situation could trigger a total collapse in public security, health, education, mobility, and environmental management, and has appealed to the federal government for aid ahead of the Games. The objective of the decree is to present to the society of Rio de Janeiro the financial difficulties of the state, paving the way for tough measures in the financial field and calling attention of the federal authorities to the difficulties that we have been having with the metro, with health, with public security, so that they can work with us. During a visit to the Olympic Park, Brazil's interim president Michel Temer promised significant financial help for the Games, but has not yet named a figure. The position of the Rio City Hall is absolute fiscal and financial comfort. The state of calamity decreed by the state government in no way delays Olympic works and the commitments made by Rio. Therefore, I want to reassert here the confidence that we will hold exceptional Games. The state of Rio relies heavily on tax revenues from the oil fields off Brazil's southeastern Atlantic coast. However, the tumbling price for oil has hit state finances, causing Rio to inch further and further into the red. The situation has been exacerbated by a huge corruption scandal that has engulfed the country's state-run oil company Petrobras, with senior government ministers implicated in bribery claims. The crisis has meant that public sector workers and pensioners in Rio State are owed wages in arrears, and hospitals and police stations have been unable to get basic supplies. Local media reported that the state-run morgue was even forced to stop receiving bodies as a consequence of the financial chaos, The Washington Post reports. A spokesman for Rio 2016 said, "As we don't receive any government funding from any level, there is no impact on our preparations." The current state of disarray over unfinished infrastructure at the site of the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro, mixed with the city's financial emergency and the public health risks surrounding the Zika virus, have not fazed Marianne Vos from concentrating on the task of defending her title in the women's road race on August 7. The Dutch rider firmly believes that the venues will be ready and the show will go on, even if it comes down to the last minute. "It doesn't matter where the Games are," Vos told Cycling News. "I follow the news, where the infrastructure is it, the health status with the Zika virus and all the construction problems, and struggles organization-wise. I'm pretty sure that in the end, on August 5, everything will be right because these things happen at every Olympic Games." The lead-up to this Olympic Games has been worrisome. To name a few reasons, the newly built bike path that parallels the road race course collapsed into the sea in April with 5 people reported missing and 2 reported dead. In June, Rio de Janeiro's city government announced that it had switched the construction contract for the velodrome to a new company after the previous firm had filed for bankruptcy protection. Although the construction of the velodrome was incomplete as of early June, organizers vowed to have the venue ready for riders to train on at the end of this month. Brazil's public health has also been impacted by the outbreak of the Zika virus, a mosquito-borne virus linked to a surge in severe birth defects. Health concerns led American Tajay Van Garderen to opt out of attending the Olympics. On this topic, Vos expressed her concern, too, and hopes that athletes and the public are safe from infection. "I hope, of course, health-wise, that the Zika virus won't be a problem for the athletes or people surrounding the Olympic Games, but politically every country has its issues. But Rio de Janeiro is in deeper financial stress than previously expected." Last Friday, the city declared a state of financial emergency and requested federal funds to help fulfill obligations for public services during the Olympics Games, according to a report in Reuters. The funding would help to avoid a total collapse in public security, health, education, transport, and environmental management, reported in the official gazette. Although Mayor Eduardo Paes wrote in a post on Twitter that the state financial emergency would in no way delay the delivery of the Olympic Games. "It is a huge event, there is a lot of money involved and economically it is not too easy to organize the Olympic Games, especially for a country like Brazil," Vos said. I can imagine they have some problems, but these problems happen every time, and every time, it works out okay. I'm quite comfortable that it will be fine. The cycling events at the Olympic Games will start with the men's 256.4 km road race on August 6, followed by the women's 130.3 km road race on August 7, both held at the Fort Copacabana. For the athletes, it doesn't matter where you compete, it's the Olympic Games, Voss said. It will be fantastic to race along the Copacabana, and to go into the favelas and to be there in Rio de Janeiro. It is the Olympic Games. It's a circus and they place the circus somewhere on earth, and for the athletes that's the place where you will perform. Though the order is meant to open the door for more funding for the Olympics, scheduled to run August 5 to 21, it did not specify where the additional money would come from or how much would be needed. The city of Rio de Janeiro, not the state, is largely responsible for the Olympics. But the state is responsible for certain expenditures, including a yet-to-be-completed extension of a metro line that is meant to connect the largest of 4 Olympic venue clusters with the rest of the host city. The state's declaration will have no negative impact on the Games, Rio 2016 Organizing Committee spokesman Mario Andrade said, according to the state-run news outlet Agência Brasil. The Games, they are guaranteed and will happen, Andrade said. Worst recession since the 1930s. For months, Brazil has been struggling with its worst recession since the 1930s. The country's economy, the largest in Latin America, shrank 5.4% in the first quarter of this year, according to government figures. The oil-rich state of Rio de Janeiro has been especially hit by falling commodity prices. Acting Gov. Francisco Dornelles told reporters Friday that money allocated through the state of emergency would go to security, mobility, and health care. Agência Brasil quoted the governor as saying that the low price of oil played a role. I want all the people of Rio de Janeiro to understand that the state is experiencing a major financial crisis, Dornelles said, according to Agência Brasil. There was a problem in the oil sector, there was a problem of economic recession, with our steel industry, with our automotive sector. We lost a large collection from the ICMS tax on circulation of goods and services, we lost a lot of royalties from oil, and this public emergency measure has aimed to draw attention of every citizen to the financial difficulties experienced by the state. Andrade, the Rio 2016 spokesman, said the declaration might help the state receive federal funds. The metro extension is not ready, and the state has said repeatedly that it needs resources. I think everyone realizes that the decree is likely to pave the way for the state to get these resources from the federal government, Andrade said, according to Agência Brasil. On Twitter, the mayor of the city of Rio de Janeiro, Eduardo Paes, seemed to distance the city from the state's move. Paes tweeted that Rio was in absolute fiscal and financial comfort. Pointing out that the city is responsible for the arenas and legacy projects for the Olympic Games, he said most of those have been delivered. The state of calamity decreed by the state government in no way delays the deliveries of Olympic commitments made in Rio, Paes tweeted. Besides, on the issues of security, where the mayor's office is not responsible, we are certain the partnership with the federal government will work. Therefore, I renew here the confidence that we will hold exceptional games. The governor's order ends a week that saw Thomas Bach, president of the International Olympic Committee, meet with Brazil's interim president Michel Temer in Rio de Janeiro. Both men confirmed that preparations were on track for the opening ceremonies on August 5. Temer said this week that the federal government is willing to assist the state government, but he did not offer specifics. Rio de Janeiro. The governor of Rio de Janeiro decreed a state of public calamity Friday, citing a fiscal crisis 7 weeks before the state's capital city hosts the Olympics. The decree warned that the state's ability to deliver basic public services to its 17 million residents such as health care, education, policing and sanitation is under threat as it faces soaring payroll costs and Olympics-related investment. The state government spent 9.77 billion reais, $2.8 billion, its biggest infrastructure investment in decades, on a 10-mile extension to Rio's subway to link a series of wealthy beachside neighborhoods in time for the Olympics. By declaring a state of calamity, Interim Gov. Francisco Dornelles authorized his subordinates to adopt exceptional measures necessary for the rationalization of essential public services to meet Rio's commitments for the 2016 Olympic and Paralympic Games. The move further allows the government to skip the bidding process to hire some contractors and loosens minimum spending requirements on mandatory items like education and health care. An official in Brazil's finance ministry said the decree would also enable Rio to obtain federal resources more quickly. The Zika epidemic and a wave of strikes and occupations of government buildings. Brazil's economy is expected to shrink by about 4% this year as a result of weak commodity prices, low demand from China, political paralysis, and the Lava Jato car wash corruption investigation, which forced the suspension of many construction contracts and led to a state of financial emergency and begged for federal support to avoid a total collapse in public security, health, education, transport, and environmental management. The plea for funds is an embarrassment for the host of South America's first games and adds to a long list of woes that includes the impeachment of the president, the deepest recession in decades, the biggest corruption scandal in memory, and can even cause a total breakdown in public security, health, education, mobility, and environmental management, the order reads. Emergency measures needed to avoid a total collapse in public security, health, education, transport, and environmental management. 49 days before the opening of the Olympics, the governor of Rio de Janeiro has declared a Just under 50 days before the Olympics, Rio de Janeiro's state governor has issued an executive order declaring a state of emergency that authorizes additional funding to fulfill obligations during the Games. A severe economic crisis has prevented the state from honoring its commitments to the organization of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, reads the order, released in the official government gazette Friday. The crisis has been causing severe difficulties in the provision of essential public services.